everyone. A very good morning, guys. I hope you can hear me and see me. Let me also check if I'm live or not. All right, yes. I am very much live. I really hope that I'm audible at the same time, visible as well. Okay. So, all right. Very warm welcome to the classes, guys. I really hope that you guys are doing really well. And yes, Navratri is going on, so I also hope that you guys are enjoying yourselves. But at the same time, we have to keep studying because studies are not going to wait for anyone, and also our exams are not going to wait for us. So, again, a very warm welcome to the class. And before I begin, I would request all of you to join the Telegram group. The link has been given here. We also have given you the scan code, so you can use the scan code or you can use the link. Now, what is the importance of joining the Telegram group? Is that you will get updates regarding the classes, you will get updates regarding the teachers, you will get updates regarding the notes and everything. You can contact the teachers, you can talk to them here. So this is going to be your one platform for all your solutions. Apart from this, I would also request all of you to please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, press the bell notification on because as soon as we post a video, you will get notified about it. But apart from that, you can also just jot down my schedule. For now, my schedule is I take classes from Monday to Saturday at 10 a.m. There might be some here and there depending upon the situation, but mostly the classes would be at 10 a.m. And we will be covering Indian history with me, which is Nicky Sinha. So चलिए बिना टाइम वेस्ट किए हम लोग स्टार्ट करते हैं. Let's start with our discussion. So yesterday only I had started talking about Buddhism and Jainism. I had taught you about the followers of Buddha. I had taught you about the stupas and everything. Now, guys, right now what we are covering is the NCRT syllabus, because you all know that for any exam, NCRT syllabus is equally important. Right now, we are covering Jainism and Buddhism from the NCRT point of view, which is your class 12 NCRT, but we will also be covering Buddhism and Jainism in much more details as well. So that's how I will go about for any of the topic that we are doing. If it is there in your NCRT, we will cover that. So every time, so I'll just tell you how I plan to go about my discussions, or how I plan to go about my discussions or about the lesson. So let me just tell you that first. So for any topic that I'm doing, I will be dividing it into two parts. First of all, I will be taking NCRT into account. Okay. So I will be taking NCRT into account. So if there's a topic, and suppose we're doing Buddhism and Jainism, and if there's something like that in NCRT, we will be covering that. And then I will be covering things from various other sources, which obviously would be in much more details. So first of all, so for example, if you're doing Buddhism and Jainism, I'll cover it from the NCRT because that will help you revise NCRT. And once we're done with NCRT, then I'll start talking about Buddhism and Jainism in much more details and in from various other sources, from various other textbooks, from various other primary and secondary sources that we have. So that's what we will do. I'll be giving you information from a number of articles as well. I'll be using a number of articles from Britannia, from Sage Publication, from Cambridge University Press. So I will be doing all that. I'll try to give you as much information as possible so that you don't miss out on any. So that's about it. So without further ado, let's start with our class. And today I'll be starting again with a little bit of the stupas, because we had done that, but I just want to give you a brief revision of it because it was a little difficult. So guys, see, any particular religion that we are talking about will always have some sacred place, or will always have a place which would be identified as sacred, and some kind of construction is usually done, right? So, and also, as you know, in the early Vedic age, there was no temple building concept. As such, we don't have any temple building concept. Temple building concept also I'll be explaining you today, how it came, why it came, what happened, how it happened, all of that we will be doing today. Okay, so for Buddhism and Jainism, let's see what was the temple building concept, or how were the stupas constructed. Now, there are certain places which are generally regarded as sacred. You know, from time immemorial, people have traveled all over the world, people have traveled all over India, and they've identified certain places as being very, very sacred, just because they might have some awe-inspiring natural beauty, or it might be some unique rock. To say the rock which has been used to make Ram Setu, because it floats in water, it has been considered as something really important. Okay, so that being said, now similarly, for Buddhism also, certain places were considered important, and certain places were considered as being sacred. And what was constructed here? Chaityas were constructed here. So Buddhist literature will mention several chaityas. Now, what are chaityas? Chaityas and stupas are a little different, guys. Chaityas are temple-like structures. So there's a central figure of Buddha. In the center, you'll have this figure of Buddha, and on the sides, there will be a lot of pillars. And what you can do is you can enter into a chaitya and you can pray there. You can offer your prayers and you can do your prayers there. Now, chaitya is usually constructed in places which are important in Buddha's life. So, for example, where he was born, Lumbini. Please remember these points. These are very important points, guys, because this you can get in your MCQ format. ये आपको आ सकता है. So, where he was born in Lumbini. When he attained enlightenment, that was in Bodh Gaya. Where he first gave his sermon, Sarnath. Where he attained Nirvana, that was in Kusi-Nagra. So these places were very important from Buddha's life perspective, and hence they were identified as being what? And hence they were identified as being important, and hence chaityas were constructed. Now we come on to stupas. Now, where were stupas constructed and why were they constructed? Now, there are certain important things that Buddha might have used in his lifetime. Maybe a comb that he had used, maybe a scissor that he might have used, maybe a piece of cloth that he might have used, maybe a pair of slippers that he might have used. So anything that Buddha had used, the relics of Buddha, such as his bodily remains or the objects which were used by him, now they have been buried. And above them, huge mound-like structures are constructed. And these mound-like structures are known as your stupas. So, stupa building is pre-Buddhist, but it is usually associated with Buddhism. And we have Ashok, who is credited with building some of the most beautiful stupas of Buddhist culture. So, according to Ashok Vadana, this is a text, this is a book, Buddha distributed the relics, Ashok distributed the relics of Buddha in different parts, and he constructed and he ordered the construction of stupas over them. So we have those in Bharut, Sanchi, Sarnath, Amravati. These are some very beautiful stupas which have been constructed. So that is one of the reasons why stupas were built. Now, if you could just let me know, guys, if you have any doubts still here or if there's anything you have not understood, I will let you know. Okay, there seems to be no doubt. Let's move ahead then. Now, how was stupas constructed? That also we have to understand, isn't it? Now, see, stupas are constructed, obviously it requires money, fine. So, money would be given by a lot of people. So, we already know that Ashok was the one who ordered the construction of stupas, and hence he would have also provided the financial support which is required. Fine. So we have found a lot of inscriptions. Okay, we have found a lot of inscriptions on the railings and the pillars, and according to those inscriptions we have found who had donated, who all have made donations for constructing them, for decorating them. So some of the donations were made by Satvahana kings, all right. And Ismay, in the list you can also add Ashoka, because obviously he was the one who ordered the construction of stupas, so you can also add Ashoka to the list. So he was the one who got the stupas constructed. So these are the kings. Then we have the guilds also, who would be responsible for making donations. I've already explained to you what guilds are in the previous classes. So if you have any doubts, you can either drop in a comment on this, or you can just go back to the classes and take a look at what guilds are. So others were made by guilds. So we have an example of a group of ivory workers who had financed one of the gateways at Sanchi. All right, now then we have hundreds of donations made by common men and women. Now, these common men and women would also, get their names added on the list. They would have their place from where they're coming, sometimes the name of their relatives and occupation. Now, this is also known as a votive inscription. So, please remember the name, because again, this can come in your exam. So, what are votive inscriptions? I'll just tell you the definition of it. Votive inscriptions basically mean when common men and women, when common people make donations to religious institutions and it is recorded in an inscription, it is known as your votive inscriptions. I will write it down for you. When common people make donations. I'm so sorry for the handwriting. I don't know why it comes like this. Okay, so when common people make donations to religious institutions and when it is recorded in the inscriptions, then it is known as what? Then it is known as your votive inscriptions. Please remember that. Then we have the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis also making some kind of donations. They also contributed towards the monument. Now, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis contributions obviously would be in the form of physical labor rather than donating money to the institution, because they lived on bare minimum, guys. I hope you remember that they were living on alms, so obviously they did not have that kind of money that they would make donations or monetary donations to the institution or to the monuments. So theirs was mostly physical labor. So these were the people who were involved in the construction of stupas, and this is how stupas were constructed. चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's talk about the structure of the stupa. So this I explained in yesterday's class also, but I just want to revise these because these are very important parts, guys, and you have a lot of chance of good MCQs coming from here. So I also have a picture here, so you can see. Now this is the mount. This mound is known as your anda. All right. Then on top of the mound, this is the semicircular mound called anda. On the mound, top of the mound, you have this balcony-like structure, and that balcony-like structure is known as hermika. So I'll just write it down. It's a balcony-like structure. On the balcony, you have a mast. Yashti is what? A mast, or you can say it's like a danda. And on the danda are surmounted chhatras, which is umbrellas. All right. Now, this is considered, all of these three are considered as the abode of gods. This is where the gods reside. This is where the gods stay. Fine. This is important. And then we have, obviously, we have four gateways in four cardinal directions. Here you can see the west and the east torna. Torna basically means gateways. All right. Now, so this I've already told you, the first 3 points have already been done. Now, around the mound is a railing which is separating the secular world from the sacred world. So this is the railing that they're talking about. You can see a railing here. This is the railing. So inside this is obviously the sacred world, because we're talking about religion, and outside this is the secular world. And then you have four cardinal directions, that is east, west, north, south. You have gateways on all of the four sides. Now, the gateways are richly carved. They're very beautifully carved. If you can ever just take a look at some pictures, you will see how beautifully they are carved. And that is one of the reasons why the English and the Frenchmen wanted to take it away to their country to be displayed in the museums, as we had read earlier about Sanchi. Now, how do you enter a stupa? So you always enter from the eastern side. All right. How do you enter? You always enter from the eastern side. Fine. So when you enter from the eastern side, obviously you're entering like this. Your the stupa will be on the right hand. Fine. Your stupa would be on the right hand. And you're going to do a parikrama or do a full circle going from east to west. Fine. East to west and coming back to east, obviously it's a full circle. And so hence what you're doing, you're basically covering the whole path of the sun. जो पूरा sun का path है, sun's rises in the east and sets up in the west. So that's what we're talking about. All right. So that is how you cover the entire parikrama. That's how it's done. So now, the later mounds came to be elaborately carved with lots of niches and sculptures, such as in Amravati and Shaji Ki Dheri in Peshawar. So that's about the structure of the stupas. Let me know, guys, if you have any doubts still here. If there's anything that you have not understood, you can let me know in this slide and in the previous slide. Okay, check. Since there are no doubts, let's move ahead. So now let's talk about how the stupas were discovered. Now, in this section, we have some of the historians and their viewpoints. Now, this is very important because again, you might get it as your MCQ. So please be very careful when I'm telling you about these various sculptures and the viewpoint that people had. So in 1796, we've already spoken about Sanchi. So now we're talking about Amravati, which is another important stup for the Buddha, for this Buddhist culture. So in 1796, a local Raja, he wanted to build a temple. And he stumbled upon, he just, got to know about the ruins of Amravati. Now, obviously, he did not understand the importance of Amravati and he thought, oh, okay, great, free stone. So he decided to use the stone to build the temple. Fine. And he also thought that there might be some treasure buried inside the hill. Okay. So he also thought what? That there must be some kind of treasure buried in the hill. So obviously he was not able to use it because guys, it's 1796, we're still under the British rule and we would need the permission to use anything like that. Some years later, there was this British person named Colin Mackenzie. Now you will also hear about him in the Vijayanagar Empire chapter. So there was this British official named Colin Mackenzie. He visited the site. Now, he made several drawings of it, he made a detailed report of it. His details were never really published. Okay, so Colin Mackenzie's details was never really published on the on whatever he's written about Amravati. Then, so first of all, who did we learn about? We learned about Colin Mackenzie. Please remember these names, guys. These names are very important. You will get them in your MCQs. ये आपको MCQs में आएंगे. So first of all, we learned about Colin Mackenzie. Now let's see what happened with Walter Elliot. Walter Elliot was the commissioner of the Guntur province in Andhra Pradesh. That's where Amravati is located. He visited Amravati. Fine. And he collected several sculpture panels. Okay, तो वहां से उसने बहुत सारे sculpture panels जो हैं ना. What are sculpture panels? Sculpture panels are basically these huge rock on which sculptures or some kind of inscriptions have been carved. So also known as stele. If you read in class 11th in Mesopotamia, I'm sure you remember that. These are huge. This will be something like this is a big stone slab, and on that stone slab you will have beautiful inscriptions or drawings or things made like that. So you'll have beautiful sculptures on that. That is known as your sculpture panels. Now, so what did he do? He collected those sculpture panels and he took them away to Madras. Fine. So, and this was known as Elliot marbles after him. He's taking our things only and they were known as Elliot marbles after him. He also discovered the remains of the Western Gateway and came to the conclusion that the structure at Amravati was one of the most largest and the most significant Buddhist stupa ever built. So what did he do? He also came across the Western Gateway, which was very well preserved, and he came to the conclusion that Amravati is one of the best and the most magnificent stupa ever built. Please remember this point, guys, because this usually comes for MCQ, which is one of the most magnificent stupa built during the Buddhist culture. Now, so by 1850s, the stone slabs of Amravati had been taken to different places. They've been taken to Asiatic Society of Bengal in Calcutta, Indian Office in Madras, and some were even taken to London. And it is not, I don't think it is weird or it is something that we should be, I don't know, maybe unhappy about it. That you will find these sculptures acting as decorating pieces for the British officials in the gardens of the British officials in England. Now, There were some people who had a different point of view. Not every Britisher is the same. So we have this archaeologist named H. Cole. Who is this? Now, H. Cole had a different point of view. Now, he aimed for in situ preservation. What do you mean by in situ preservation? He said that whatever preservation you have to do, it should be done on the site itself, and the sculptures, or for example any artifact, should not be carried away to any other part of the country. They should be preserved on the site itself. So these are his words. It seems to me a suicidal and an indefensible policy to allow the country to be looted of original works of ancient art. So what is he saying? It seems to me suicidal. So according to him, it is suicidal, and it is something, it is a policy which is something, a policy which you can't defend, that you would loot a country of its original work of ancient art and artifact, and you would take it to some other country. He said that museums should have plaster cast copies instead of carrying the original. The original should remain in the country itself. That's what his point of view was, which is a very good one. Obviously, people did not really pay attention to what Cole was saying. Fine. And Amravati was, and there's always been this question in the historical world, that why is it that Sanchi survived but Amravati did not? Now, these are the various reasons behind it. And also we have to credit Sultan Jahan Begum and Shah Jahan Begum for preserving the site, for making sure that the site remains preserved, because if they had not done so, it would not have been so. So that's about it. So just let me know if you have any doubts here. All right. I can see no doubts in the doubt tab, so I think I'll move ahead. Now, now we will be talking about some of the beautiful, beautiful sculptures of Buddhist tradition. Now, these are some beautiful sculptures, and I'm sure you have seen these sculptures in the form of stupas and anything else. I'm sure you've seen it all. So that's what we will be now talking about. Now, before I get into sculptures, we have to understand that understanding the sculptures, understanding Buddhist sculptures, will only be possible if we understand the hagiographies, or if we understand the books associated with these sculptures. So we have to be familiar with the literary sources as well, because otherwise, if we go without the literary sources, we will have zero understanding of it, and it will be actually very difficult for us to understand. Especially when the Britishers came to, try to understand these sculptures, they always felt these are centers of, serpent worship or animal worship or some kind of, totem or cult worship, because they did not understand the literary sources behind it. Let's see. So we have one of the first sculptures. It's a sculpture panel. Now, when you look at the sculpture, it looks like it is a scene from the village. People are gathering. It seems like a fair, ki mela laga hua hai. But then if you actually look at Visantra Jatak, all right, now these are, again guys, these are our sources. Please remember them. ये बहुत important sources हैं हमारे लिए. ये हमारे बहुत important sources हैं. Please remember these sources. So Visantra Jatak, it is a scene from the Visantra Jatak which shows that how a generous prince has decided to give away everything to a Brahmin, and he is going to live in the forest with his wife and children. So, this is again a message of Buddhism. Buddhism has always stated this. Buddhism has always stated that you should not be engaged in overindulgence, right? So, that's what they're talking about. So, this is one of the sculpture panels. Now, if you look at the stupas, or if you look at any of the Buddhist sculpture, you will see that Buddha has never been depicted in the human form, or Buddha has never been depicted in the sculpture format. Never. Alright. Now, what is the reason for that? Buddha has always been represented through symbols, whatever he has done. If he is talking about his first sermon, then it is represented through a wheel. If we're talking about his Nibbana, it is represented through a stupa. So Buddha has never been represented in the form of, in the human form, and he's always represented in form of symbols. And again, we have to be familiar with the hagiographies, otherwise we would not be able to understand the symbols, right? For example, the empty seat symbol. The empty seat symbol is meant to indicate the meditation of Buddha. Fine. The stupa is meant to represent Mahaparinibbana. These are important, guys. Please remember, because they can ask you this in MCQs. That what are these supposed to represent? Another frequently used symbol was the wheel. Now this represents his first sermon, which was in Sarnath. All right. So these sculptures, you can't understand them literally. You have to be aware with the hagiographies. You have to be aware with the literary sources in order to understand what they're representing. Okay. So empty seat represents meditation. Stupa represents Mahaparinibbana. And wheel represents his first sermon. Remember these. These are very important. So let me know if you have any doubts in this slide, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay, let's move ahead. See, guys, when we're talking about Buddhism, we have to understand that most of the followers of Buddhism actually came from Hinduism itself, isn't it? They were part of Hinduism, and later on they joined Buddhism because Hinduism was not willing them to offer the kind of equality that they needed. Okay, just a second. So it was not ready to offer them the kind of equality which was needed. Hence, these people went from Hinduism to Buddhism. Now, it is absolutely possible that a lot of Sanskritic traditions would have found their way into the Buddhist traditions, because remember, the followers are actually initially followers of Sanskritic traditions, isn't it? So, we have an example of this beautiful woman who is swinging from a tree. Okay, so there's this beautiful woman who's swinging from the edge of the gateway. She's holding on to a tree. Now, initially, the scholars were a bit intrigued because this does not seem to have anything to do with Buddhism. Fine. But then, when we examined other literary traditions, we got to know that it is actually described in the Sanskritic tradition, and this woman is known as Shala Bhanjika. Please remember this name again, this is very important. You can get this in your MCQ. There's this woman who's hanging by the on the edge of the gateway, holding on to a tree. And what is she known as? She's known as Shala Bhanjika. Now, Shala Bhanjika is supposed to be this कहते हैं ना, this lucky woman, or she basically brings in luck, all right, because whatever she touches it grows and leaps and bounds. So she her touch would cause the trees to bear flowers or fruits. So it would, anything would grow in leaps and bounds, and she was considered as auspicious, she was considered lucky, she was considered as bringing in a lot of wealth and prosperity. So, in this regard, a lot of symbols, auspicious symbols, which actually did not belong to the Buddhist culture, has been associated with Buddhist culture. Okay? The Shalabhanjaka motive suggests that people who turned to Buddhism did enrich it with their pre-owned, pre-Buddhist ideas, which can even be non-Buddhist beliefs and practices. So, as I told you, people were actually followers. The followers were coming from a Sanskritic tradition, so it is no wonder, or it is nothing to be really shocked about, that they enriched Buddhism with the pre-Buddhist ideas as well. We have some other sculptures as well. Now here you will find the finest depictions of animals as well. So elephants, horses, monkeys, cattle, all of these have been represented. The Jatak, so there are two theories regarding this, that why are animals being represented? Now, animals have been represented. First of all, the Jataks contain a lot of animal stories. Now, animal stories contained in Jatak is very much like fables, where you are given a moral value through animals. Fine. And it is also, there's also a point of view that maybe animals were carved out to create a lively scene. Now, some people are of the view that animals were carved out to indicate human attributes. They were used as symbols to depict human attributes. For example, elephant would have been used to signify strength and wisdom. Maybe if jackal is represented, he would clarify cleverness. He would symbolize cleverness. So it was done to represent some of the human attributes, symbol to represent human attributes. Now, we have another motive. Now, this is a very interesting one, where a woman is sitting on the center. Then you have elephants who are sprinkling water on her as if they're performing, her abhishek or consecration. Now, there's some historians who identify the central figure as Maya, who was Buddha's mother. And some identify her to be the central figure as goddess Gaja Lakshmi, or Lakshmi, who is the who's the god of good fortune and money, and she is also associated with elephants. Then serpent or Sheshnag, जो विष्णु जी का शेषनाग है, that has also been found in several of these pillars. Now again, if you have to understand these things, guys, we have to be really familiar with our hagiographies and our Buddhist literature, because if we are not, then we will not be able to understand any of it. Because when James Ferguson visited Sanchi, he thought it to be a center of tree and serpent worship. You know why? Because he was not familiar with the Buddhist literature. That is why he thought it to be a center of tree and serpent worship. So you have to be familiar with the Buddhist literature to understand this. Okay, let me know if you have any doubts here. Just take a look and let me know. This slide and this slide, just take a look at both the slides and just let me know if you have any doubts. So let's move ahead, and now let's talk about a development which had taken place and the development of Mahayana Buddhism. Now, what is this? From the 1st century CE, there are certain evidence of some major changes in Buddhist ideas and practices. Okay, so I'll just draw a table which will make it much more easy for you to understand. So, the earlier form or the original form of Buddhism was known as Heenyan. Okay, and the later form of Buddhism was known as Mahayana. Now, what do they literally mean? Heenyan means lesser vehicle, and Mahayana means greater vehicle. Vehicle to attain nirvana, vehicle to attain salvation. Now, in original form of Buddhism, what was given importance? Self-effort was given importance. Karma was given importance. Individual agency was given importance, right? And enlightenment was something you could obtain from your own self-efforts. And Buddha was regarded as a human being, guys. He was never considered as what? He was never really considered as being. He was never really considered as being what? A god. That was never the case. So Heenyan focused on self-effort, individual agency, which is your karma, and human being. Now Mahayana, self-effort and karma, both of them have taken a backseat here. Alright? The focus was not on that. In Mahayana, Buddha, the image of Buddha of being a human being had now converted into him being a savior. Into him being a savior or a god. And enlightenment could be achieved by worshipping him. जितना ज़्यादा आप उनको वर्शिप करोगे उतना ज़्यादा आपके चांसेस हैं कि आपको सैल्वेशन मिलेगा. So these were some of the differences between Heenyan and Mahayana. So earlier Buddhist teachings had given importance to self-effort in achieving nirvana. And Buddha was regarded as a human being who again, gained enlightenment through his own efforts. उन्हें अपने efforts के through enlightenment मिला था. But then gradually with Mahayana Buddhism, we have this image. We have this image of savior which had emerged, fine. And it was believed that he was the one who could ensure salvation. So he had become a savior, he had become a god. If you keep worshipping him, if you keep doing things, rituals and everything associated with it, you will be able to achieve salvation. Now, one very important concept associated with Mahayana Buddhism is the concept of bodhisattvas. Now, what are bodhisattvas? Bodhisattvas are basically those human beings who have accumulated enough merits on their efforts that they can achieve salvation, but they don't. Why? Because they help others to achieve salvation. ठीक है? वो क्या करते हैं? वो दूसरों की मदद करते हैं salvation करने में. Fine? So bodhisattvas were, so just like you have the concept of pandit, right? है ना? You have the concept of Pandit in Hinduism. Now, these are people who know how to achieve salvation, but they don't achieve salvation for themselves. They help others through various yagyas and pujas and pindadan to achieve salvation. Similarly, we have the concept of bodhisattvas coming in, where these people accumulated merit, but they did not attain nirvana, but they helped others in attaining nirvana. Now, all of these became part of Mahayana Buddhism. All right. What is it? They became part of Mahayana Buddhism, and hence Mahayana was known as the greater vehicle, and Hinayan was known as the lesser vehicle. Why the term vehicle is being used here? Vehicle basically means how you move, okay, how you basically move from achieving salvation from this life to salvation, the vehicle or the path that you take. So if you take the older path, it's a lesser vehicle. If you take the newer path, it's the greater vehicle. Now, with this, we have come to an end of our discussion about Buddhism and Jainism. But now we have to discuss something very important, guys, and that is the growth of Puranic Hinduism. So before I begin with this, I just want to explain you a certain process here. So I'll just use my empty slide. Now, what has happened? That let's talk about the process which has happened. So people earlier were followers of Sanskrit, tradition, okay. Now, because they were not offered the equality which they very well deserved, they started moving from this Brahminical tradition to Buddhism. Now, try to understand that those people moving from Sanskritic tradition to Buddhism were the major workforce. Don't you think? The untouchables were the major workforce because they were doing some of the most menial jobs. They were doing some of the most, you can say, a job which is not very happy, a job something which not everyone would be able to do, a job which not everyone will be willing to do, isn't it? They were doing a job which no one was willing to do, and they were not given that dignity, and hence they started moving towards Buddhism. So, I would say Brahminical tradition was, or the later Vedic tradition was losing its major workforce. So, we have to see some kind of changes. So, now the Sanskritic tradition, or basically the upper classes who are monopolizing on religion, they thought that, we must do something. Let's bring these people back into the Hindu fourfold. How do we bring these people back? So let's make some changes. Fine. How do you make changes? Vedas is already been written. The changes can't be done in the Vedas, isn't it? You can't make changes in Vedas. Vedas tell you about the four varnas. They tell you about how it has to be followed, how it is based on birth. You have already said all of those things. So you can't bring about that change. Suddenly you can't say, oh, no, 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 let's be flexible and let's be this and that. So you have to invent something new. And hence, you will see the transition from Vedas to Puranas, or Puranic literature as we call it. Okay. So from Vedas to Puranas. Now Vedas, what was the difference between Vedas and Puranas? Now Vedas was written in very difficult Sanskrit. It was fixed, can't be changed. It could only be read by the upper classes. Okay, what was the difference in Puranas? It was in very simple Sanskrit, something which anyone could read. The common people could also read. It was quite flexible, and most importantly, even the woman, even women and Shudras were allowed to read it. That's something really interesting. And most importantly, you know what happened? We have the Trinity here changed. Okay? Trinity जो है वो हमारी बदल चुकी है. From Agni, Indra, Som, we have already come to Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Now, in Vedas, you will not find the concept of avatar. But in Buddhism, you will find, sorry, but in Puranas, you will find the concept of avatar. So, because I'm sure you know that how Ramji was an avatar of Vishnu, Vishnuji has taken 10 avatars actually, and he's supposed to take his 10th avatar, the Varha avatar, and he's going to come and save the world. Why do you think these avatars and alls were introduced? Iska kya matlab hai, nahi hai? So that all is a discussion that we will take up in the next class, because there's certain things I want to explain, which is we will be talking about the great traditions, we'll be talking about the little traditions, then we will be talking about how the concept of avatar was introduced, why was it introduced, what is the reason behind introducing it. All of that would be done in detail. For now, just understand this. There's a process at work. There were a lot of people who were following Brahminical traditions, Brahminical rules and regulations. And there was this jati called the untouchables and the Shudras, who were marginalized by the Brahminical traditions, by the upper classes. Buddhism offered them the equality which they needed, and hence they started moving towards Buddhism. Because of that, the Sanskritic tradition or the upper classes of the society lost a major workforce. Why? Because these people had started moving towards Buddhism. So to get them back into the Hindu fourfold, we had to make some changes, and that changes was done in the form of moving from Vedas to Puranas. So what is the difference between Vedas and Puranas? Ved is written in very simple Sanskrit. Ved is written in difficult Sanskrit. Puranas is written in very simple Sanskrit. Vedas is something which is fixed. Puranas is flexible. Vedas were meant to be read only by the upper classes. Puranas is something which even the women and Shudras could read. And Vedas, you don't have the concept of avatar, but in Puranas, you have the concept of avatar. So next class, we will take it up from here. We will be talking about the great traditions and the little traditions. And then in finality, we will see the rise of Puranic Hinduism. Alright. So this is where we will stop, and guys, let me know if you have any doubts. For those who watch the recordings, if there's something you don't understand, you can always drop me a message. You can always drop a comment, and I will take it up in the next class or in the doubt clearing session. I will definitely take it up. So do let me know if you have any doubts here. So alright guys, I think I'll end the session here. And again, before I go, please do join the Telegram channel. There's a scan code here, and the link has also been given. So this is your one-step solution for all the classes. Updates regarding the classes. You can talk to the teachers here. You can get your notes from here. So all of that would be readily available. And as you know that our parent channel was hacked, so I would request you that please do subscribe to our parent channel once again, because our educators are back with a bang. They're trying very hard to give you all the videos that they had posted at one point of time. They're working really hard for it. So it would really mean a lot to us that if you subscribe to the channel and show us your support, and also show your support to this sister channel, Telugu Exams Result Guru. Do like the video, share it with your friends, drop a comment if there's something you don't understand, or if there's something you would want me to add, or anything like that. And also, do subscribe to the channel. This is going to mean a lot to us. And then also, please press on the bell notification so that you get notified whenever we post a new video. And it would really make us happy if you could I could see a lot of people on the live chat as well. So thank you so much, guys. I really hope you're enjoying the classes, and if there's any difficulty, you can always contact us. So okay, thank you, take care, bye bye.